The Tylogian Empire had long been considered the unchallenged ruler of the galaxy. Their technology was far beyond anything other species could hope to achieve, and their military might was unparalleled. No race had dared to defy them for centuries. With their advanced weapons and fleet of warships, they conquered worlds with ease, extinguishing entire civilizations in their wake. The Tylogians saw themselves as the pinnacle of evolution, destined to rule forever. It was their birthright, or so they believed. When the first reports of humans, strange creatures from a small, insignificant planet on the edge of the galaxy, began to trickle in, they were treated as little more than a curiosity. Earth, their homeworld, was a tiny backwater planet in the scheme of the universe. The humans had only just begun to explore space, sending small probes and rudimentary ships beyond their atmosphere. Their technology was crude, their fleets minuscule. It was laughable that such a primitive species could pose any threat to the might of the Tylogians. But the reports continued. Ships made from patchwork materials and outdated technology appeared on the fringes of Tylogian-controlled space. The human ships were crude, no match for Tylogian warships, but there was something unsettling about them. They were persistent. They didn't turn back when they encountered Tylogian territory. They kept pushing outward, slowly expanding, testing the limits of their reach. At first, the Tylogians dismissed the humans as nothing more than an insignificant nuisance, easily dealt with. They assigned a few scouts to monitor their activities, certain they would never pose a serious challenge. The reports came in, detailing strange encounters with the humans, seemingly reckless tactics, random, unpredictable movements, and an unwillingness to back down. But still, the Tylogians laughed. Such a species could never threaten their empire. Then, the first major confrontation took place. A small human convoy, carrying supplies to one of their distant colonies, was intercepted by its Tylogian patrol fleet. The Tylogians, confident in their overwhelming firepower, moved in quickly, expecting an easy victory. But the humans didn't flee. Instead, they fought back with a surprising intensity. Their ships, though small and underpowered, fired back with accuracy and precision. The humans used the environment to their advantage, battling within asteroid fields, using gravity wells to hide their movements, and launching surprise attacks from unexpected angles. The Tylogians were stunned. The human ships, though outmatched, fought with a determination that was foreign to the Tylogians. They were not like the other species they had encountered. They did not know the meaning of surrender. In the end, the Tylogians won the skirmish. But the damage was done. One of their warships had been severely damaged, and several human ships had managed to escape. It was a loss, one that would never have happened if the humans had been as weak as they first appeared. The Tylogians found themselves with a growing sense of unease. They couldn't understand it. How could such a primitive race fight so fiercely? At that moment, the Tylogians realized something they hadn't before. The humans were different. Something about them, some hidden strength, made them more dangerous than they had anticipated. This wasn't going to be a simple conquest. The humans had begun to stir something that the Tylogians hadn't seen in centuries, a true challenge to their dominance. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The defeat of the Tylogian warship didn't go unnoticed. In the command center aboard their flagship, Commander Zoreth stood silent, his claws tightly gripping the armrest of his chair. The crew had been so certain of their victory over the human ships, but now they were facing a growing crisis. The humans had launched a counterattack that was unthinkable, and the Tylogians had underestimated them in a way that made their arrogance almost laughable. Zoreth's mind raced with the implications. "Report," Zoreth barked, his voice deep and cold. The communications officer hesitated for a moment before responding. "We've analyzed the data from the engagement, Commander. It appears the human vessels used suboptimal tactics, yet they struck precisely where we were weakest. They employed guerrilla-style combat, hiding in asteroid fields and launching surprise ambushes. We were unprepared for this." Zoreth growled in frustration. Unprepared. We are the Tylogians. How could we be caught off guard by these primitives? We underestimated them, Commander, the officer continued, voice trembling. They showed a remarkable understanding of our weaknesses. We've suffered significant damage to 2 of our ships, and many of their vessels escaped unscathed. Zoreth's thoughts turned to the human convoy. A simple supply mission, something that should have been routine. And yet, here they were, licking their wounds from an unexpected loss. If these humans could stand their ground in a battle like this, what could they do with more time, more resources? Send word to the council, Zoreth said. They must know about this. These humans are not like the others. Meanwhile, on Earth, the news of the skirmish spread quickly. Captain Eleanor Kane, who had led one of the human vessels in the attack, was hailed as a hero. She stood before her crew, her face serious despite the cheers and applause. "Don't get too comfortable," she said, raising a hand to silence the room. "We won this round, but the Tylogians will not stop. They'll be back, and when they return, we need to be ready. They've seen what we can do. This isn't just about survival anymore. This is about showing them that we're not going anywhere." The crew nodded solemnly, each of them fully aware of the stakes. The Tylogians might have dismissed humanity as a weak species, but this victory had proven that even the underdog could fight back when given a chance. The human fleet, though still small, had the advantage of unpredictability, something the Tylogians didn't understand, something they couldn't plan for. Across the galaxy, word of the battle spread like wildfire. The humans had shown that they were more than just a nuisance. They were a challenge. The Tylogian Council convened in secret, and their discussions were heated. The idea of retreat, of negotiating with the humans, was raised by a few. But the majority still held the belief that this was just another minor setback, one that would be quickly corrected. The humans would learn their place, and the Tylogians would crush them, as they had crushed so many others. But there was doubt in the air now. How could a species that had only recently begun to explore space pose such a challenge? It made no sense. The Tylogians turned to their intelligence network, hoping to find some explanation. They studied humanity's history, hoping for clues. What they discovered was both surprising and disturbing. The humans had faced countless hardships, natural disasters, wars, famine, and yet they had always survived. Time and time again, they have fought, adapted, and thrived. It was in their nature to endure, to adapt, and more troubling, to find ways to turn their limitations into advantages. The Tylogians were starting to realize they had underestimated humanity in a way they never should have. Back on the Tylogian homeworld, the air in the council chambers was thick with tension. The high-ranking officials and military leaders gathered around a vast, circular table, each one trying to suppress their growing unease. The once impervious empire had been shaken, and no one knew how to respond. It was one thing to face a few scattered rebellions from weaker species, but facing humanity was something different. Commander Zoreth, having delivered the report of the humans' unexpected resistance, was now seated before the council. His once proud demeanor was subdued, his claws nervously tapping the surface of the table. The defeat in the skirmish, while not catastrophic, had left a mark on the Tylogians' sense of invulnerability. Their perception of dominance had been challenged, and with that challenge came the unsettling question: what if the humans weren't the weaklings they had assumed? "Explain yourself," Zoreth, one of the elder council members, a tall figure named Velkuth, demanded. His voice, though calm, carried an unmistakable edge of suspicion. "You've presented us with a report of a small skirmish that resulted in minor losses, but you are suggesting these humans are capable of something more. Prove it." Zoreth hesitated before speaking. "It is difficult to quantify, Velkuth, but we have been analyzing human behavior. They fight with an intensity I have never seen before. Their tactics are unpredictable and unorthodox. When confronted with an obstacle, they do not give up. they find a way to adapt. We were caught off guard by their response. And more troubling still, they do not simply fight to survive. They fight to win, no matter the odds. The room fell silent, each council member digesting the gravity of Zoreth's words. The Kylogians were a race built on efficiency, precision, and dominance. To hear that their enemies fought not only for survival, but with a drive to overcome any challenge struck a nerve deep within them. This wasn't something they had ever expected. Are you suggesting that a species of primitives, with no real history of intergalactic warfare, can match our military might? Velkoth asked, his tone skeptical, though tinged with a flicker of uncertainty. Zoreth's eyes narrowed. Yes, they may not have our technology, but they possess an instinct we cannot ignore. We've examined their history, wars, disasters, near extinction, and they always rise again. They find new ways to fight, to innovate. It's as if defeat only strengthens them. The room murmured with disbelief. Another council member, Grelfar, leaned forward, his pale skin rippling in agitation. This is absurd. How can a species so young, so technologically backward, have anything of value? We could obliterate them in a single strike. Zoreth shook his head. Perhaps, but I fear we may underestimate them again. Their greatest strength is not in their technology, but in their adaptability and their refusal to bow down. They've survived every challenge they've faced, and if we continue to underestimate them, we may find ourselves outmatched. Velkoth's expression darkened as he processed this new information. For the first time in centuries, the Kylogians were questioning their ability to dominate. Could it be that they were not as invincible as they had always believed? I will not allow a primitive species to become the thorn in our side, Velkoth declared, his voice full of authority. Prepare a larger fleet. We will crush them before their defiance spreads. We cannot afford to let them rise. But the doubts had already taken root. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, some still unwilling to acknowledge the full extent of the threat humanity posed. Others were beginning to realize that humanity's survival instincts, its ability to adapt, evolve, and fight back, might be the very thing that could topple the Tylogian Empire. As the meeting drew to a close, the tension in the room was palpable. Velkoth's command was clear. An offensive was imminent. But the question remained, would it be enough to stamp out humanity's fire, or had the Tylogians already made a fatal mistake in underestimating them? The decision had been made. The Tylogian Council, although filled with doubt, had resolved to launch a decisive strike against humanity. Commander Zoreth was appointed to lead the assault, and he had no time to waste. The human resistance had already proven to be more than a nuisance. It was a clear and present threat that needed to be dealt with swiftly. There could be no more mistakes. The Kylogians mobilized their forces, assembling a fleet of unprecedented size. Dozens of warships, each one capable of devastating entire colonies with a single blast, were fitted with the most advanced weapons their empire had to offer. Their target was Earth itself, the cradle of humanity. The Kylogians hoped that by striking at the heart of their enemy, they could break the human spirit once and for all. If Earth fell, the rest of humanity would crumble. The journey to Earth was long, and during that time, Zoreth brooded over the reports he had received. The humans were preparing as well. Their ships, though not as large or advanced as the Tylogian fleet, had proven time and time again that they could punch well above their weight. Zoreth couldn't help but respect that, though it only made him more determined to crush them completely. But the unpredictability of the humans haunted him. What if they had another surprise waiting? What if, by the time they reached Earth, the humans were ready to strike back in ways he hadn't anticipated? "Commander, the fleet is ready," a subordinate announced as Zoreth stood before the massive holographic map of Earth's solar system. The Tylogian fleet was positioned at the edge of the system, the blue and green planet of Earth looming large in the center. Zoreth nodded grimly. "Move forward. We'll make our presence known." As the Tylogian fleet entered Earth's orbit, The humans responded quickly. Unexpectedly, they launched a defensive counteroffensive, and the battle began almost immediately. Human ships, much smaller and less powerful than the Tylogian vessels, began firing from all directions, using the planets and moons in the system as cover. Zoreth's ships were quick to retaliate, but the humans weren't fighting like any enemy he had faced before. Their tactics were erratic, weaving in and out of asteroid fields, using the debris to shield themselves from the overwhelming firepower of the Tylogians. It was as if they didn't fear their own destruction, instead using the chaos of the environment to their advantage. Zoreth's first strike targeted a human cruiser that had been causing significant trouble. His fleet unleashed a torrent of fire upon the vessel, but before it could be destroyed, the human captain launched a daring maneuver, weaving between asteroids, creating a disruption in the Tylogian targeting systems. Zoreth's ship shook as a blast from the human ship impacted its shield, causing a temporary failure. He was taken aback. This was no fluke. The humans were adapting quickly, using their environment and their unpredictability as their greatest weapons. Reinforce the shields. Bring the weapons online, Zoreth commanded. His crew scrambled to respond, but even as they did, the human fleet intensified their attacks. They didn't hesitate. They didn't pause to reconsider their chances. They just kept coming, relentless, like a swarm of locusts. Captain Kane, one of her officers, shouted, as human ships danced around their Tylogian counterparts. They're not retreating, even with the odds against them. They want to win. Keep the pressure up, Kane replied, her face grim as she watched the Tylogian ships descend. We don't back down. Not now. Not ever. The battle raged on for hours. The humans' cunning and fierce determination were slowly wearing down the Tylogian fleet. Zoreth watched in disbelief as his forces began to take losses, vessels destroyed or crippled by the humans' unpredictable tactics. The Tylogians, despite their superior firepower, had been caught off guard again. The tide was beginning to shift. The humans had proven something that the Tylogians were unwilling to admit. They were not just a minor species to be crushed. They were a force to be reckoned with. Commander, we're taking heavy losses. The humans are relentless, one of Zoreth's officers reported, her voice trembling. Zoreth clenched his fists. The battle wasn't over yet, but his confidence was beginning to falter. He had underestimated the humans once again. And now, with every passing moment, it was becoming painfully clear that their tenacity could not be easily broken. His fleet was strong, but humanity was stronger than he had ever imagined. The humans were not giving up. They were not going to let Earth fall without a fight. The battle raged across Earth's orbit, with explosions lighting up the dark expanse of space. The Tylogian warships loomed like shadows, their advanced weapons raining down on the human defenses. But the humans fought with a ferocity that caught even Zoreth off guard. Each attack was met with a stubborn resistance, each blow from the Tylogian fleet matched by an even fiercer counterstrike. Captain Kane paced across the command bridge of the human flagship, the resolute, her eyes locked onto the chaos unfolding on the view screen. Around her, the crew worked furiously, their faces set with determination. The Tylogians were pressing hard, but the humans were not breaking. The time for retreat was long past. They would stand their ground or die trying. Status report, Kane barked, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. Multiple ships damaged, but nothing critical, Captain. Lieutenant Perez replied, her fingers flying across the console. We're holding them back, but their forces are overwhelming. They've got numbers and firepower on their side. We've got surprise and adaptability. But how long can we last like this? Kane nodded grimly, her mind calculating. We can't afford to wait. We need to give them something they haven't seen yet, something they can't predict. She turned to Perez, her eyes sharp. Prepare the prototype ship for launch. It's time. Perez looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. You want to deploy the Tempest now. It's untested, Captain. We don't even know if. I know what I'm asking, Kane interrupted, her gaze unwavering. The Tempest may be our only chance. We're running out of time. The Tempest was a human prototype ship, smaller, faster, and more maneuverable than any other vessel in the human fleet. It wasn't as heavily armed as the Tylogian warships, but it wasn't meant for straight-up combat. It was designed to strike from unexpected angles, to break the Tylogian advantage of superior firepower and numbers. The humans had never tested it in battle before, but Kane had no choice. The Tylogians were too powerful, and they had underestimated humanity for the last time. Do it, Kane said, turning back to the view screen. We hit them hard. Fast. Meanwhile, aboard the Tylogian flagship, Zorath watched with growing frustration as his fleet continued to struggle against the humans. Their ships were unpredictable, their tactics untraceable. He had expected the humans to break under the pressure, but instead they had only grown more determined. They fought as though each ship was their last, and their tenacity was beginning to take a toll on the Tylogian forces. Commander, we've lost another ship, one of Zorath's officers reported. Their fleet is more resilient than we anticipated. Their counterattacks are unpredictable. Zorath slammed his fist onto the console. I will not let these primitive creatures stand in the way of our empire. His voice was full of fury. Prepare to launch our full assault. We'll wipe them out in one final strike. But just as the Tylogians prepared to unleash their full force, something unexpected happened. A flash of light appeared from the edge of the battlefield. A new, unknown ship, moving at an incredible speed, darting in and out of the chaos with precision. Zorath's eyes widened as he watched the ship approach his fleet. It was small, sleek, and unlike anything they had seen from the humans before. What is that? One of Zorath's officers asked, alarmed. It's faster than anything we have on record. Zorath's mind raced. This was the humans' new weapon, the Tempest. He had heard rumors of it, but he hadn't believed it could be real. Now it was clear. The humans were more than just an unpredictable annoyance. They were adapting. They were evolving. And with this new weapon, they had just leveled the playing field. Deploy countermeasures. All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel. Zorath ordered, but even as he spoke, the Tempest danced through the chaos like a shadow. It struck with lightning speed, darting in and out of the Tylogian formations, targeting weak points and exploiting every opening. The Tylogian fleet, though vastly superior in size, was not prepared for this new kind of combat. The Tempest weaved through their fire, its speed and agility allowing it to deliver devastating blows before vanishing again into the void. Back on the Resolute, Kane watched in satisfaction as the Tempest struck its targets. She knew the risk they were taking. The prototype had never been battle-tested, and its durability was unproven. But they had no choice. The human resolve was stronger than ever now, and with the Tempest on the field, they finally had the weapon they needed to challenge the Tylogians on their terms. Hold strong, everyone, Kane said, her voice filled with quiet determination. We've just turned the tide. The Tempest moved like a ghost through the Tylogian fleet, its sleek hull barely a blur against the backdrop of stars. Every moment it evaded enemy fire felt like a victory. Captain Kane stood at the helm of the Resolute, her eyes glued to the view screen as she watched the prototype ship weave in and out of the chaos. It was exactly what they needed. A weapon designed to outpace their enemies, a ship that could fight with agility and precision instead of brute force. And now it was doing just that. Another Tylogian warship down, Lieutenant Perez reported, her voice filled with astonishment. The Tempest hit their weak point, strategic targeting on their engines. They never saw it coming. Kane allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction, but only for a moment. This was no time for celebration. The Tylogian fleet was still massive, still overwhelming. Their numbers and firepower were immense, and even with the Tempest in play, they couldn't afford to let their guard down. The battle wasn't over yet. Keep the pressure on them, Kane ordered. We can't let them regroup. This is our chance." As the humans' forces pressed forward, the Hylogians struggled to adapt to the relentless hit-and-run tactics of the Tempest. Zoreth's fleet was beginning to splinter under the pressure. The once formidable formations were starting to break apart, their ships turning on each other as they tried to fend off the smaller, faster human vessels. On the Hylogian flagship, Zoreth seethed in fury. His fleet, which had once seemed invincible, was now reeling. The Tempest had caused significant damage, and it wasn't the only problem. The rest of the human fleet was no longer just a series of scattered ships. They had rallied, and they were fighting with a cohesion and tenacity that the Hylogians had never expected. "Commander, we're losing control," one of Zoreth's officers said, panic creeping into their voice. "The humans, they're adapting faster than we can respond. Our ships are falling apart." Zoreth slammed his fist into the console. "We cannot let this happen. We are the Hylogians. We do not retreat." But the truth was undeniable. The humans weren't retreating. They weren't running. They were fighting with everything they had, refusing to surrender, refusing to bow down. And with each passing moment, it became clearer that this wasn't just a battle for Earth. It was a battle for their survival. Humanity had reached a turning point, and they were not going to let the Hylogians take it all away. On the human side, the morale was high. The appearance of the Tempest had given them hope. Now, they saw the cracks beginning to form in the Hylogian fleet. This was no longer a battle for survival. It was a battle for the future of their species. The humans fought not just for victory, but for their place in the galaxy. "We've got another fleet coming in, Captain," Lieutenant Perez shouted. "It's a relief force, human ships from the outer colonies. They're here." Kane's heart lifted at the sight of the reinforcements. Humanity wasn't alone. They were united in this fight. Ships from every corner of human space had responded to the call, and they were arriving just in time. The Hylogian forces, already spread thin, now faced an even larger and more coordinated resistance. "Prepare to join the fight with them," Kane ordered, her voice firm. "We don't stop until they're gone. Push them back to their homeworld." As the reinforcements joined the fray, the tide of the battle turned decisively. The Hylogian fleet, once confident in its power, was now on the defensive. Their ships were scattered, their formations broken, and their morale was cracking. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. Zoreth watched the chaos unfold on his bridge, his mind racing. The humans were relentless, but there was more to it than that. They were fighting with a unity, a shared purpose that he had never seen before. The Hylogians had conquered countless worlds, but they had never encountered an enemy like this. The humans were not just defending their planet, they were defending their right to exist. For the first time in his career, Zoreth began to doubt. Could they win this? Was their empire truly invincible? The answer was slipping through his claws as the humans continued to strike with an unyielding ferocity. The Hylogians' grip on the galaxy was loosening. The humans had begun to fight for something far more powerful than mere survival. They were fighting for the future of their people. The battle had turned into a frenzy. The Hylogian fleet, once a symbol of dominance, was now faltering. The humans had begun to fight with the precision and coordination of seasoned warriors, using their knowledge of the environment and their sheer willpower to dismantle the Hylogian invaders. The Tempest continued to dart through the void, striking critical blows to the larger Hylogian ships, forcing them into disarray. Zoreth watched as the chaos unfolded around him, helplessly staring at the ever-growing damage reports coming in from every corner of his flagship. The losses were mounting, and it was clear that the Hylogians were being overwhelmed. What had started as a confident invasion now seemed like a desperate fight for survival. "Commander, our fleet is in retreat," one of Zoreth's officers reported, the panic in her voice impossible to ignore. "We can no longer maintain a coordinated defense." The humans. Zoreth cut her off with a sharp command. "Shut down their escape routes. We cannot afford to lose control now." Regroup. Hit those ships back in formation. But even as he gave the orders, the reality set in. The humans were no longer just defending their world. They were driving the Tylogians back. Zorath felt a cold, sinking dread in the pit of his stomach. This was no longer a skirmish or a battle. This was a full-blown rout. On the human side, Captain Kane stood tall in the heart of the Resolute, watching the tide of the battle shift with each passing moment. The Tempest had done its part, and now, with the reinforcements from the outer colonies, humanity's forces were gaining ground. It was clear that the Tylogians were starting to fall apart. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now the humans had them on the ropes. "Keep pushing them back," Kane ordered, her voice filled with determination. "We have them on the run. Don't let them regroup." The humans, fueled by their newfound momentum, pressed forward. Their ships, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that the Tylogians couldn't match. With every shot fired, with every Tylogian ship destroyed, the humans felt the weight of victory growing ever closer. "Captain, we've got a priority message from Earth Command," Perez reported, her voice crackling through the comms. "Put it through," Kane responded. The image of General Hawkins appeared on the view screen. His face was grim but filled with pride. "Captain Kane, you and your crew have done the impossible. Earth Command is watching, and we are all in your debt. The Tylogian fleet is broken. We're preparing to launch a final assault to push them out of our solar system." Kane nodded, her resolve unwavering. "Understood, General. We'll finish this. Humanity doesn't back down." As the Resolute and the other human ships pressed forward, the Tylogian fleet continued to falter. The larger warships, once intimidating with their overwhelming firepower, now seemed slow and vulnerable in the face of human ingenuity and determination. One by one, the Tylogian ships fell, either destroyed in combat or fleeing into the void, hoping to escape the wrath of the humans they had underestimated. Zorath gripped the armrest of his command chair, his claws digging into the metal. His empire, his pride, was crumbling before him. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had turned the tide. They had shown that even against overwhelming odds, they could rise and fight back. And the Tylogians, who had once believed themselves invincible, were now learning the harsh lesson that no empire could withstand the power of human resolve. "We're losing control," Zorath muttered, his voice barely a whisper. His empire, built on centuries of conquest, was on the brink of collapse. "Retreat. We need to retreat now." But it was too late. The humans were relentless. No retreat could save the Tylogians now. The final blows were about to land. Back on the Resolute, Kane's eyes locked onto the view screen as the final wave of Tylogian ships attempted to break through the human lines. But it was futile. The humans had already won. "Prepare for the final push," Kane said quietly, her voice filled with a sense of finality. "Let's finish this." The battle had reached its climax. The Tylogian fleet, shattered and demoralized, was now in full retreat. Once the pride of their empire, their warships limped away from Earth's orbit, their engines sputtering, their hulls scarred by the ferocity of humanity's response. They had been beaten, not by superior numbers or firepower, but by the sheer will of a species determined to survive. Captain Kane stood in the heart of the Resolute, her gaze fixed on the view screen as the last of the Tylogian ships fled into deep space. The victory was close now, but she knew that it wasn't just the Tylogians they had beaten. They had conquered their own doubts, their fears. They had proved that humanity could face the impossible and still stand tall. "Status report," Kane asked, her voice steady, despite the weight of the moment. "All hostile ships are retreating or destroyed, Captain," Lieutenant Perez reported, her voice filled with awe. "The remaining Tylogian vessels are retreating beyond the system. We've done it. We've won." A collective sigh of relief rippled through the crew. The overwhelming tension that had gripped them for hours was finally beginning to dissipate. The impossible had been achieved. Earth was safe. Humanity had not only survived, They had triumphed. But as the crew celebrated, Kane felt a deep, somber weight in her chest. This victory had come at a great cost. There would be time to mourn the losses, to reflect on what they had fought for. But for now, there was something more pressing. "We've won, but this isn't over," Kane said, her voice firm. "We need to ensure the Tylogians never return. We need to finish what we started." Perez nodded, her face serious. "We're ready, Captain. Earth Command is already preparing for a final strike. We'll drive the Tylogians completely from the system." "Good," Kane replied, turning back to the view screen. "Let's make sure they know we will never be their prey." As the remaining human forces rallied, they prepared for one last assault. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about ensuring that Earth, and every human settlement, remained free from the shadow of the Tylogian Empire. It was about securing a future where humanity could thrive without fear of domination. Far away, the Tylogian fleet commander, Zorath, was aboard his flagship, staring out at the endless void of space. His once proud fleet was broken, scattered, and retreating. The humans had defeated them, not through superior weapons or strategies, but with something more powerful. Something Zorath had failed to understand until it was too late: their unwavering resolve. As he sat in silence, the memories of their devastating losses weighed heavily on him. The humans had proven themselves a force unlike any other, a species that would not yield, no matter the odds. The Tylogian Empire had learned the hard way that they had underestimated their foe. Back on Earth, the final waves of human reinforcements entered the fray, pushing the remaining Tylogian ships further out of the solar system. Their firepower, combined with the resilience of humanity, was too much for the retreating fleet to handle. Within hours, the last Tylogian vessel left Earth's orbit, never to return. "We've done it," General Hawkins' voice crackled over the comms. "The Tylogians are gone. Earth is safe." Kane allowed herself a small but triumphant smile. "Not just Earth. The whole human race is safe. We've shown the galaxy that humanity will not be conquered. We will rise, no matter the enemy." She looked out into the vastness of space, where the wreckage of the battle lay scattered like forgotten relics of an ancient conflict. The Tylogian Empire, once a dominant force in the galaxy, was now in ruin, and humanity, against all odds, had emerged victorious. The war was over, but this was only the beginning for humanity. They had proven their strength, their unity, and their will to survive. The universe would never forget the day the humans had shown that even the most powerful of empires could be brought to its knees by the sheer determination of a species unwilling to surrender. And so, as the remnants of the Tylogian fleet disappeared into the void, humanity stood tall. The fight for Earth had been won, but the fight